Let's go ahead and get started, and people will just hop on as we're going along. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And you are here for What is CMI5? If you were expecting this to be a fire breathing class, we're in the wrong session. Although Duncan could help you with that as well. Um, I'm Ann Wynn, Marketing Specialist at Risk, and today our speakers who will be presenting the information are Art Orkentine and Duncan Welder. Art is the CEO of Risk, and as an early xAPI enthusiast, he led Risk to be the first to implement xAPI in a commercial LMS, our product. And since 2012, he's been an active participant on the ADL CMI5 committee. So we've got an expert sharing his information about CMI5. And Art does frequently present and authors blog articles on both xAPI and CMI5 and is considered to be among the industry's leading experts on both specifications. Duncan is Risk Director of Client Services. He's an xAPI evangelist and advocate. He also frequently speaks and presents at industry conferences on xAPI, its capabilities, and its uses, including DevLearn and Torrance Learning's xAPI cohort. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the gentleman to take it away.
Thank you very much, Ann. And I am thrilled to have you all join us today. What we're going to do is talk about CMI5. We just mentioned there what it is, why it's important now as the world is changing and e-learning standards evolve. More importantly, we're going to take a look at several examples where CMI5 is being used in action. And that will really help show where CMI5 and xAPI in general can help influence the instructional design space. So I am going to start with the assumption that you have some base understanding of xAPI. We're not going to get down into technical nuance. As a matter of fact, we don't see any code, any JSON in this presentation at all. But if I do make the assumption on something and use a term that you don't recognize, don't hesitate to hit that chat box that Ann is watching and will let us know. We can certainly back up there. I don't want to lose anyone. I did want to let you know we do have a intro to xAPI webinar that's recorded out on our site as well. I think Ann will put that link in the chat for everyone. So if you do want a little bit of background information, that is out there and available. And we've got some resources that are far more detailed around CMI5. So if you do want to get to those geekier levels. Speaking of geeks, this is us, e-learning geeks by trade, and I think just regular geeks by birth. But let's see, Art has been here with the Risk since 92. I've been here since 2003. So a lot of time in the space and the opportunity to see a lot of different implementations in different environments internationally. We've done a lot of work with high consequence industries both. So contact information for us. Always love to chat about xAPI, CMI5, anything else in the learning space. So I'm going to start off just going big here and say, all right, what's wrong with Scorm? We're just going to tear the Band-Aid off here. And like people are going, oh my gosh, those are fighting words. I really am passionate about Scorm, and you have some good reasons to do. For those of us that were developing and deploying e-learning before Scorm, the world was not straightforward. Everything was essentially built for purpose. So most organizations had multiple learning systems that you had to pull data from to report on anything to get a holistic view of students. I couldn't buy content without making sure it was going to work in every possible environment that I had, because it may not work in the next place over. So not a lot of interoperability and just a ton of troubleshooting to get content out. But with Scorm, and its evolution, its rollout, and the idea of being able to create content one time and deploy it across multiple platforms was very, very attractive. So I think it's really advanced the L&D industry over the past 20 years now. But it is dated. So Scorm requires a few things. It's first, it's browser based, so it has to be launched from an LMS in a browser. A fairly limited data set, right? We're talking about xAPI being this shiny package with a bow on top, and you get completion, you get a score, you may get a duration, but you can't really add much beyond that, where the idea behind xAPI, one of the base concepts, is to be able to extend that model where I can grab other data and see how maybe someone is moving through a piece of content, or how a bigger group is our cohort of people are all answering questions similarly. So with Score, my data set's fairly well fixed. There's not a lot of mobile compatibility there. Normally there's something that's custom done if someone's using Score in a mobile environment. And one of the things I want to be able to do is launch a mobile application instead of a web page. So I can't really do that in Scorm either, since I need to open it up in a browser. It's not particularly secure, and a lot of that's older technology focused that some of the JavaScript can be inserted there to override a score. And it's a fairly, I'm going to call it a little bit of a dumb implementation from the LMS side, right? Because the LMS says, hey, if it's Scorm data and it comes back in, we're supposed to take it. So there's not a lot of decision making there, whereas with xAPI and cmi5 now, you have some checks and balances to make sure that is that person that is going through that content, and you can't fool the system as easily there. The final thing I want to mention is that content in the Scorm world has to live in the same domain as the LMS. Okay, so fine. What does that mean? Well, most of the time, if you're going out to a website, so you're going to book a plane ticket or a hotel, you've got those controls for a calendar and paging back and forth. Those are probably coming from a content distribution network. It just means there's a server that those things can be loaded on, and whenever I hit that page and I'm in Houston, they're going to get them from the closest location. If you hit that page and you're in Singapore, they're going to get them from that location. So it's improved performance, especially with limited bandwidth kind of areas, but it just did not exist at the same level when Scorm came out. So there wasn't this thought of having there wasn't a concern with having the content live physically with the LMS the way that now supporting international locations can be more difficult there. So that also opens up to things like content as a service, where as a content provider, I can keep the content on my server and just allow my clients to access it from there, running it out of their LMS still, so they're tracking that information and getting it back. But if I need to make a change, instead of repackaging and sending out potentially hundreds of thousands of Scorm modules, I just change it one time on my server. So some nice benefits from that side. Now, the other thing that I hear very often, or less, starting to normalize a bit now, is wait. I thought xAPI was the new Scorm, and that was just going to fix all of this. So what is the cmi5 thing, and why do we need it? xAPI is really a method for storing learning records, activities that a person did. So it's an experience that they had. So those are being put into a learning record store. I said, Art and I have an intro to xAPI webinar that you have the link for there. But essentially, xAPI is acting as a communication layer. One of the benefits of the specification is that it requires that the learning record store can send and receive statements from other learning record stores, easy for me to say, but there's no mention of an LMS in the specification at all. So unlike Scorm, there's nothing in xAPI that discusses packaging courses, how they get launched, what does completion mean, how do you sequence those kinds of things. So what we have is a fairly limited amount of guidance as how to use or to apply xAPI. So again, as I mentioned, those Scorm functions that are missing there. But there's still going to be a use case for launching content from an LMS. It may not be everything, right? Because I can, with xAPI, I can send statements from all kinds of devices, mobile devices, Internet of Things devices. But at some point, in most cases, I'm going to need to be able to do some kind of tracking, right? So I need to schedule training. I need to be able to track competencies, maybe assign a personal development plan to a person. I need to run compliance reports. So all of these functions are really more LMS functions that I think will keep inside most organizations, or you say, gosh, I'm going to maybe pare back from my full flavored LMS and go back to what you think of as more of a learning experience platform that manages maybe just a subset of these different functions because you don't need everything there. There was a lot of buzz just a couple years ago about, hey, we're going to be able to get rid of the LMS, and we're going to just go to a learning record store. And I've seen a lot of presentations where it will say, hey, we did get rid of our LMS, and we've got a learning record store now. And then we added a piece on to do reports, we added a piece on to do scheduling. It's like, oh, wait, so you built an LMS on top of xAPI, or some smaller subset of. So again, since xAPI really just focuses on those learning records, what we need is a way to consistently track the content that is being launched there and have it done in some interoperable way, which introduces us to Art now.
Thanks. So that way is obviously where we're headed. We're headed to CMI5. So CMI5 is a profile for xAPI, and a profile basically is a set of rules. How are you going to define your actor? What verbs are you going to use? What activity types are you going to use? And various other rules that you put into on top of xAPI to make a profile. And CMI5 is the profile for launching content from an LMS. So it's similar to Scorm in that you would import content. It may reside locally. It may reside basically anywhere on the internet. It may reside in a mobile application. Doesn't really matter with CMI5. But it is the case for how you consistently and interoperably launch xAPI content from an LMS and get results back and do some actions based on those results. The specification was created originally by AICC and ADL and an industry consortium. Now that AICC is gone, all of the materials have been basically handed over to ADL for custody management. And there's an ongoing CMI5 working group that continues to work on the spec, clarify it, and consider features for future versions. It was first released in June of 2016, so it's been out there for a while, and we'll talk about usage of the spec a little bit later in the presentation. So a little bit of history. First, way back in 1993, AICC, the Aviation Industry CBT Committee, recognized that they needed an interoperable way to launch content. So Boeing would develop content and then give it to the airlines, for example, and the airlines didn't know what to do with it, so they needed to be able to launch it. They needed to be able to launch it with sequencing, have completion rules. Sometimes the airlines wanted different order of things than Boeing wanted, but there was no way for Boeing to build it so that it would work with everybody's LMS. So they developed this committee, consisted of several of the airline manufacturers and several of the airlines working together to develop a spec for how this would happen. back in 1993, when we first started using it, it was file-based on, what was basically a DOS machine, right? And you would write files that the content would then, and then you would open the content, and then the content would read those files, and that was the communication mechanism. So it advanced to a level where it would operate essentially on the internet.
But you could do it across a wide area network.
That's right. You could do it on a wide area network, not just a local area network. So it was pretty fancy. Then ADL came along and thought that, hey, why don't we make something new that can be consistently used basically across the government. They wanted packaging, they wanted multiple SCOs to be inside of a single piece of content, they wanted sequencing rules and so on. So they adapted AICC and changed it into Scorm. A lot of people don't know it, but a lot of Scorm is originally based on the work of AICC going back to 93. A lot of the terminology used in Scorm comes from AICC. And then along came xAPI in 2013. It was originally called Project Tin Can. You've probably heard of that name before if you're familiar with xAPI. And basically, they threw out everything they had done before and said, we need a better way to track, a more modern way to track. We need to track games and simulations, and we need to track things that are not launched from the LMS. So that's what xAPI was designed to do. Unfortunately, xAPI is super flexible. So that's one of the best things about xAPI, and it's one of the worst things about xAPI. And there's no rules on how are we going to do this when we launch content from an LMS, because on the slide Duncan showed earlier, a lot of people still need an LMS for a lot of regular functionality that's just not provided by xAPI. So CMI5 was developed by the joint committee, as I said, of AICC and ADL, and was released in 2016. And then right now, this is this LRS conformance test. So the ADL developed a conformance test for xAPI. It consists of 1,300 or something like that tests that you can run to ensure that the LRS you are using it conforms to the specification. And now they've just either built or have they released the profile server?
I don't know if it's been released.
I don't think it's released, but it's in at least a test mode or a beta mode, which will serve up the profiles and validate statements for that they follow certain profiles.
So it's a good point there, because there are lots of profiles outside of CMI5, and I know that's one that we've talked about, but things like video, right? If I said fast forward, and you said skipped, and you said advanced, we wouldn't be able to speak to each other.
Yeah, right? We can't have any interoperable.
So there are rules there and those kind of use cases too. So carry on.
Feel free to jump in anytime. Right now, under development is a CMI5 conformance test, and we've got a slide on that later, so I'm not going to go into any particular depth on it here. Lastly, I mentioned in the history, this is somewhat future-based, although this may have actually occurred. IEEE has been studying adopting xAPI as an IEEE spec, and the idea that ADL has is that shortly after that, they'll begin work on adopting CMI5 as an IEEE specification. So this has come a long way in a few short years.
Short amount of time.
So you might be thinking to yourself, well, gosh, I can already launch content from an LMS using xAPI. In Storyline and tools like that, you've got a button that probably used to say publish to tin can. And then we finally got them to stop saying that, and the xAPI community was not happy with people calling it tin can. So they changed it to an xAPI package that you can publish from the tool, and you can import it to an LMS, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'll tell you what some of the problems with that are. There are some serious limitations to that package. First of all, it is not a defined or supported specification. It's sort of been community adopted, I guess, because there's been a need for many years to be able to launch xAPI content from an LMS. But this is based on a maybe 1.5 page, 2-page white paper that was published on somebody that was, hey, in theory, this is where we would start. And the white paper in question only talks about how to package it up so it can be imported and how to launch it. That's it. There's no mention of important things like, what does completion mean? what is the completion criteria? What's the passing score, if there is one? And so there's been a lot of just basically guessing on what the completion criteria is. In fact, I know one content tool vendor, fairly well known, that I said, well, what do you do to tell the LMS there's completion with this package? Because there's no rules. And he said, oh, we just send everything. We send satisfied, we send completed, we send passed, and then we just hope that the LMS will take that and one of those will get through. And this is not a great idea either, just cluttering up your LRS with a bunch of statements that have no particular meaning. You're just trying to get credit. So not a good idea. So it's not very interoperable, and that's a good example of not being interoperable. Nobody has defined any rules, so we just send everything. The most important thing is it violates the xAPI spec, and there's a paper on the or document on the CMI5 website that points this out. It was written jointly by ADL and the working committee that says this violates the spec. The reason it violates the spec is it sends extra things to the LRS that are not part of the xAPI spec, and there's no definition in xAPI what the LRS is supposed to do with extra parameters that it's never heard of. So while you might get away with it now, in the future, especially if we're moving to IEEE specification, they're not real good with soft fuzzy stuff. They like things to be very, very clear and very, very defined. So it's quite possible that xAPI package in the future is just going to break as LRSs move for IEEE confirmation, plus all the other disadvantages that I've mentioned. We just can't possibly recommend using that. And there's a lot more. As I mentioned, there is a document on the CMI5 website, which I believe we have a link to later, that will compare CMI5 versus the xAPI package and point out a lot of the deficiencies of the xAPI package and why you shouldn't use it. So now we've talked about what CMI5 is. Let's talk about why should we use it? What are the advantages? Well, first off, and one of my personal favorites on my hit list of CMI5 features is no pop-ups. In parentheses, if properly implemented by the LMS, if it follows all of the best practices for using it. So why are pop-ups a problem? Well, first of all, we're doing a lot of training these days on mobile devices, and it took me a long time to figure out on my mobile device, and I'm fairly technical, where the pop-ups went when something popped up, because they don't really pop up on a mobile phone. They just kind of become another number at the top of the screen. At least they do on Android. I don't know how they work on the Apple cult phones. So they're really a bad idea in mobile. In addition, to this day, the #1 call to our help desk as an LMS provider is, I clicked the link to run the training and the content never opened. Well, we know we are on the hunt for the famous pop-up blockers. I believe the record is we've found 7 on a single user's machine, because they install the Google toolbar and they install the Bing toolbar and they install all these things that they're really corporately not supposed to do. But you know how that goes. And we have to get all of those pop-up blockers, or we have to get IT to go out usually and clean that machine up before they can launch content. And so getting rid of pop-ups is a great feature. It's much more mobile friendly, CMI5, because it's using technology that is mobile friendly. It's using modern technology like REST interfaces and JSON. I don't want to get all deep in the weeds there. The technology it uses is much more friendly to mobile devices than the methods that Scorm uses. It's extensible, and it just inherits this naturally. Because xAPI is extensible and you can add your own data items, CMI5 just inherits that wonderful capability without doing any additional work on its part. You can have, for example, content-defined data. We will show an example of that when we get to the demo section. You can add extensions. CMI5 has its own extensions, but you can add your own extensions, and there's actually a way in the CMI5 spec for you to create a validation file that has your custom elements in it to validate. So distributed content, Duncan talked about the content distribution network earlier. CMI5 is designed out of the box to be using distributed content. So you can, when you import a CMI5 package, it can have just the structure of the course with links to content that's remote. So it's a complete URL to the content to open it, and it doesn't need to reside on the same server as the LMS. One of the great advantages of that is to use a content distribution network, so you can place the content closer to your end users, and it can move around with them. Another great advantage of that is, with Scorm, when you make a major change, you've got to re-import it into the LMS. You can't just go out and update the content. It has to be re-imported so the LMS is aware of all the data items. Well, with CMI5, and we have done this, somebody gives us an update, we just go put it out on the server without ever even telling the LMS that it's changed. It doesn't need to know. It doesn't care. You can share data between learning activities, and we've got an example of this, so I won't go into that in any great detail right now. So what many people probably don't know is, for a very long time, well, going back to 2001 anyway, so 20 years, there has been an ongoing battle between LMS providers and Scorm content providers. The reason for this is there is a lot of things in the CMI5 spec that are, not CMI5 spec, the Scorm spec, pardon me, that are not clear, and they can be interpreted in multiple ways. So, for example, the move-on criteria, is it success? Is it passed? Is it completed? It depends upon your interpretation of some of the language in the Scorm specification. So what often happens is that LMS vendors and content providers get into battle and have to, it's finger pointing. Well, yeah, I didn't get credit. Well, we get credit for everybody else. Why don't we get credit for you? Well, my content works in every other LMS and doesn't work in yours. And it's just back and forth and back and forth, because we may have differentiated things different ways. Now, what's happened because of this is, many of you know of Rusty Software. They developed a Scorm engine product that can be built into LMS. They also built a Scorm driver product that many content tools use to provide Scorm features. And what they've done in their engine is they've got at least 100 different properties that you can set on the back end. If content has interpreted things one way and you've interpreted the other, you can go into the rest of the engine and say, well, for this piece of content, I want to do this, and this interpretation of these various things. That's just silly. That's just proof of a poorly defined specification. CMI5 includes a complete course structure. You might think of multiple SCOs in a Scorm package. Well, this is different, and we're going to take a look at that, where you can have blocks, and blocks can contain blocks and assignable units, and there's a roll-up criteria. It's very interesting, but it's easier to explain when we're looking at a picture, so we'll wait until we get there. CMI5 is also client agnostic. Scorm is dependent upon a browser without some kind of workarounds or some kind of custom work, and it uses a modern client architecture, as I've already mentioned. Data portability. If you've ever tried to move from one LMS to another, done a migration, typically the Scorm data is not ported across applications because its storage is just not defined by the specification. It has data items, but it doesn't say how they should be stored or what the structure is. But CMI5 is just xAPI, and xAPI's data structure is very well defined. And in fact, the ability to pull data from one LRS and import it into another LRS is a feature of xAPI. So you just get data portability out of the box for free with CMI5.
Well, that's about the only way we could test things early on. When there was no test suite, there were a few of us LRS providers, and we'd send statements to each other.
Make sure they work. Yeah, that's how you do interoperability testing if you don't have a test. So here's an example, a rather complex example of a CMI5 course structure. So you can see the blocks have geologic materials at the top, which is a block, and then it contains multiple assignable units, or AU. That's the term for basically what I would call a lesson in a system, but it's assignable unit in CMI5. And you can also see that some blocks have nested blocks. So the middle of the screen geologic timescale has first an assignable unit, and then it has a block, and that block contains another block, which then contains multiple assignable units. And then there's a roll-up of completions. So whenever all the blocks and sub-blocks within one block, so a parent block has many child blocks, as soon as everything is completed for that, CMI5, you're required to send a completed statement or satisfied statement for the block. And then when you've satisfied all the blocks and all of the AUs in the course, you finished the course essentially at that point, it sends a satisfied statement for the course, assuming you met all of the move-on criteria.
So that could be really hundreds of actions that happen with a single completion, right? I complete one deeply nested content element, one AU, I get the completion from it. It satisfies the block that it's in, the block that it's in. Each one of those has to have a statement sent to.
It's on the LMS side, it's some complex programming, but it's a great feature of CMI5.
One of the things that I really like as well is the fact that in xAPI, and this is not really even a CMI5 feature as much as a base xAPI feature, but if you want to have content defined data, you can do that in xAPI. So, case here on the screen, so you're going to do some kind of task, record it, upload it into the content module, and then that could be used in later content modules, because part of the specification means I need to be able to read it and write it, or it opens the door for instructor graded lessons. This is something that that I've been working on actually right now, the past several weeks. The ability that a group wants to have students fill in essay questions, have instructors grade those, and have that grade show right back up in that same content later, right down the line. So use case, take take this photo, take the video, upload it. If you didn't have CMI5, could you do this? Well, yeah, sure, right? We do this all the time. But you have to have some kind of custom application to store that data and move those things around, where in a CMI5 world, all the data can just be recorded to the LRS, because in addition to a statement, right, we talked about the extensibility, being able to add additional data on. One of those pieces of data is an attachment. So you can upload a video to an LRS, you can upload a text file or an image and pull those back down. We will do that shortly. The other example that I really like is data sharing between content modules or across AUs. Because I mentioned that read and write capability, I could have, as a use case, a student that puts some kind of content in module 1. Say we're going to have a multi-series course on resume writing. So the first, they start off, they do address, and they do some kind of objective statement. And then in module 2, and they set those up in module 1. Then they go to module 2, and they're going to start building out their work history. Well, module 2 could go back to the history of module 1, read that data out of the LRS, and go ahead and populate the address, name and address, and objective. Then you work on your work history part, and then maybe the next module make it into say your education, and then the other two pieces could move over. So again, possible without CMI5. It would be pretty,
difficult.
It could be certainly difficult there, but as far as getting into easy adaptive learning with CMI5, we really can share that content back and forth. So you think of this example of building inside content is great, but what if I said to my inside my module to go check the LRS and see if I've already passed bloodborne pathogens awareness training this year, and if so, take that off of my general safety training day or training course. So we could adapt, or you say, gosh, this person struggled with a test last year, so they don't get an option of test out. But someone that had done well previously could be tested out of a module. So just kind of expanding the way you think about, again, from design and what we can do with all this xAPI data. The final thing I wanted to do before I kick it over to Art to actually get in and start going through some of these case studies was talking about the use and adoption. So this is Rusty software. They're the ones that run the Scorm cloud, right? So I think just about everybody that I know that develops content uses the Scorm cloud for testing. Certainly if I have someone that says, gosh, I don't know why I don't get a completion record for this, I'm going to test it in the Scorm cloud first, or ask them to test in the Scorm cloud first. So they have access to tons and tons of content. What's interesting here is, starting back in, well, before 2012, you see xAPI content being loaded really at an exponential rate, right? Now, since the release in 2016, you can see CMI5 has even developed a more steep building curve there. So in the last year, it was 4,000 CMI5 course packages increased, which compared to the year before, this is 250% increase. So there is a lot of building here, and I know that they also just released this for 2020. So get an updated copy of that. Here's a list of some of these of the adopters. I don't know to what level, right? Some of this is commitment. Some actually have truly fully integrated applications now, so you can export to a CMI5 package and load that into your LMS and run that guy. So there is adoption happening. Now, it certainly does seem a little slow by comparison, for the past 4 or 5 years now, but I think that is on its way to changing as well. So.
And here's why. The ADL announced in 2019 that they were going to develop a CMI5 conformant test suite. And if you know much about the history of Scorm, it sort of lagged until DoD put its imprimatur on it and said, yeah, we bless thee, and set up a testing suite and actually had a testing lab for Scorm content. And then once DoD starts demanding that everything conform to Scorm, well, there's big money in DoD. They're probably the largest spender of money on training in the world. So everybody wanted a piece of that. So Scorm took off. Well, the same thing is likely to happen with CMI5. The BAA Broad Agency Announcement was first put out at IFES in 2019. Then they replaced that by a request for solutions, or RFS, on the TREX system, T-REX, we like to call it, in May of 2020. And then the project was awarded in August. We did fail to capitalize August. Sorry about that. And it's very critical to the adoption of CMI5, just like it was very critical to the adoption of Scorm. Once the DoD wants it, then everybody wants to produce it. So what's the future of Scorm? Well, it's pretty bleak. It's in the RFS for CMI5. These are some quotes that they had about Scorm, which are a pretty good indicator of how the DoD now feels about moving away from Scorm. And they're saying it's not extensible enough to support the technologies that they need to use in modern learning. And CMI5 provides a better, more flexible, adaptable, robust alternative to Scorm. So that's a pretty good indicator that they are looking to move away from Scorm. But it's not dead yet.
Sure.
Well, Scorm is going to be around for a while. I mean, you don't have to go out and immediately start converting all of your content to CMI5, and unless you're just looking to get the advantages, but you probably want to start at least thinking about it and planning. There are millions of Scorm content modules out there. This is going to be a massive effort for both DoD and industry to get all of that content converted. Maybe it doesn't need to be converted. Maybe it will just phase out. And the next time you need to update something, you'll instead publish to CMI5 instead of to Scorm.
Yeah, I was going to say, a part of the Department of Defense total learning architecture is they're taking other systems as well that don't generate xAPI now, and they're converting those, so they'll have essentially a bunch of intermediate LRS that you collect data from systems that are not xAPI conformant until they can get them converted in there.
Yeah. So there's no, unfortunately, direct way to say take a published Scorm package and run some magic and it will spill out as a CMI5. You basically have to republish. So hopefully you've had good content management practices and you know where all your content is, and when you need to, you can easily republish it as CMI5. But I do think it's important to note that the RFS makes it very clear that DoD is looking for a path away from Scorm. Right now, CMI5 and Scorm in the current Department of Defense instruction, DoDI, are that you can use either Scorm or CMI5. That will eventually move to where you can only use Scorm. We just don't have any idea when that's going to be. So the implication is pretty clear. If you can use CMI5, so if you have a CMI5 conformant LMS and you have a CMI5, I shouldn't say conformant because there's no conformance test, just when there's a conformance test. If you have a CMI5 conformant LMS and CMI5 conformant content tool, you should probably use that to future-proof your content. And then in addition, you get the benefits that we discussed along the way. So with that, these references are in the presentation. I don't want to spend a lot of time going through them because we're going to run out of time to do any demo work. But we could probably, well, this will be recorded, so yeah, you can get them. Okay, so let's jump over now and look at, make sure I haven't logged off. Probably have. Nope, made it. Okay. So this is some examples of CMI5 content exhibiting various features. Go ahead and start this one. So really what we're showing here is the ability to not use pop-ups. So I've clicked on the link and you'll see no magical windows up here. There's no browsers hiding behind the curtain. The browser has gone away, the LMS has gone away and the content has replaced it on the screen. So it's a much more tightly integrated look to the end user instead of launching this content in a new window and they look disconnected and so on. So this is actually the ADL example in the ADL Script Library. So there's a library out there that if you're developing content, you can use that library for free to send content. So to send statements that are conformant to CMI5. And this is an example of asking a CMI interaction, which is a test question in xAPI terminology. And then it's got a statement viewer here. So this is one of the statements that it would send. This is the initialized statement, which means that the content has loaded and is ready for interaction with the student. I can answer a question like this. I can submit it, and then I get another statement at the bottom saying I answered that question. And it's if you're familiar with CMI interactions in xAPI, this follows that particular model. And then ask another question, but instead of going through all this, I just want to show the ability to return to the LMS. So it's in a terminated statement indicating that the content had been terminated. Doesn't mean that they passed or completed or whatever. It just means the AU has exited normally. So there's an example of not having pop-up blockers and having a really smooth integration and a much better user experience, especially on a mobile device than you would get with Scorm. This is the next example of critical success factors we kind of co-developed with some partners that needed this tool. And instead of talking a lot about it without it on the screen, I'll bring it up. Again, you'll see that the LMS goes away and the content opens. This is designed for mobile, so it looks a little bit funky on this screen. But it's an assessment tool where you can go through and answer questions about where you are in a particular type of project. It's basically a big buy of technology project, information technology. So this is a tool that they can go into and assess themselves. All of their answers are written to the LRS. You can send basically any statement you want under CMI5. There's just kind of rules for how you send them, but yeah, you can send any xAPI statement essentially. And the answers can be pulled back out of the LRS when they come back in. So it sort of stores the steady state of where they are in moving forward with their informatics project. This was originally developed in Storyline, when at the time Storyline did not have CMI5 publish capabilities. It does now. But we had to go in after the files were published and add CMI5 to it to get it to work with an LMS. And it's a joint project between 3 different vendors. So now I'm back where I left off, and we can go on to, this is a project developed with Lectora, I think, Lectora Publisher. Yeah, I'll try that to come up on the screen. So this is just a fun little project. We did the testing for Trivantis when they were developing their CMI5 engine. So I just built a little module. I'm not going to make you watch this video, but it's just a video, and then it asks some test questions, and then you can go back to the LMS. But this is a commercial off-the-shelf product, that rapid authoring tool that has had CMI5 capabilities into it for 3 or 4 years at least, I think. Back to the LMS and back to my lesson plan, or in progress training. And the last thing we'll show is what we kind of showed in the module earlier, or in the presentation earlier, is the blocks. And this is the geologic course. It's kind of a fake course, so I can't really run anything in here, but this is a sample structure, excuse me, from the ADL website, where we've got some samples of how you build a course structure.
So you could download this, and if it's CMI5 conformant LMS,
You can import it.
you can import it, and it will essentially validate that
Your
it meets
import
those
Yeah.
those requirements. Part of the spec
If
is
it
that
comes up and it looks like this, I mean, other than we've added things like graphs and charts and pretty grid, but you can tell that you're importing your structure. It's a good way to test out. If you can handle this complex structure, you can probably handle any of them. It's pretty complicated.
data sharing.
Oh, I don't. Oops. Sorry, I think I completed it the last time we went through this presentation. So the other thing we wanted to mention, you want to cover this?
Sure, but glad to. More information coming up next week, March 17th. The ADL is giving its own next steps and way forward presentation for CMI5. Brian Miller is with Rustici and was instrumental in the development of Scorm. Bill McDonald, and his were made active with xAPI and CMI5. Bill McDonald was instrumental in AICC. This is when I first started working with Bill. He was at Boeing, now at Amazon, but absolutely great resource there. And then Andy Johnson, probably one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Super good guy, but with the ADL itself. So he's a specification and standards manager for that group. So they will have a fantastic webinar next week that I am sure that you would want to catch, I'm going to be there myself to join in. So again, wanted to just get that resource back out in front of you there. With that, I was going to bounce right back over here to my
Why is it not coming up?
back to the slideshow side, and really just to get to that next slide where we have the contact information. So if you have any questions, anything that we can provide, never hesitate to reach out. You've got email, you got the website, you got the Twitters, and I will turn it back over with that to you. I appreciate your time. To Ann, I'll turn it back over to Ann so she can wrap us up and tell you where to get some of these additional resources.
Thanks, gentlemen. That was great. And we did have a question, and I know Art has some insight on this from Amy. She asked, I'm curious as to why recently I'm hearing from some developers that xAPI is less flexible and too constrained as a reason for not supporting. I don't know if they take the same position for CMI5, and I'm curious as to what perspective they may be coming from, or is this just an excuse for not leaning into a specification?
Ooh, I don't want to criticize other vendors. I would have to say, I'll just go with the positive side. xAPI is incredibly extensible. I know because we've been using it for a lot of different things. For example, AR, VR is catching on big with our customers right now. I'm really kind of surprised how quickly it's moving. But we have had 3 different customers contact us about sending statements from Unity games and AR and VR applications, and they're adding particular extensions. One of them, well, actually all of them, wanted some way to give credit in the LMS for xAPI data coming in, and so we created a custom extension. And based on that, we see that it's a trigger, and then we can fire a trigger, and credit can be given for the students. CMI5 has its own set of extensions. We extend, gosh, all of our stuff that we write out of our LMS into our own LRS has extensions to be able to identify the hierarchy where the data came from. So like if a student a supervisor approves a student's enrollment in a course, we keep track of what supervisor did that in an extension. I don't know how, I could not come up with anything that I couldn't do as an extension. And we didn't have the example, but we have an example of uploading files and you can pull them back down. So, and we have a module where you upload a picture of a particular vehicle that's your favorite vehicle. And then in the next module, it determines what vehicle you uploaded, shows your picture back to you, and then shows you some instructions on how to operate that particular vehicle. So I consider xAPI to be ultra extensive, and I can't imagine anything that would be more extensive. The Scorm data model is fixed. You can't change it.
I'd like to answer the question a different way if I could.
Please.
All right. So I kind of I'm going to split it between the 2 sides of designer and developer. And I know for a lot of years now, especially with rapid development authoring tools, this role has blended versus, when I started working in Toolbook and Authorware 25 years ago.
You're old.
but one of the things that's critical, I feel like, in xAPI is define what you want to do first, right? So this is really part of the designer, what I think of as a designer role, to say, gosh, I want to be able to add this kind of question, or I want to have my training adapt and follow this branch if someone answers this way, follow this branch if they answer another way. Or you say, gosh, I need to have something that is a mobile application that's going to send training records back, and you know what, some of the time it's not going to be connected because I'm going to be out of touch, right? Or in the old days, we used to design everything. We just assumed that you were going to be connected because Scorm needs to be connected. And then you built some contingencies around losing the internet. Well, in mobile world, you design for losing connections, and your contingency is really how do you sync things when you're back onto a mobile or another network. So my point is, what is the thing that you're trying to do? And if you can define that, then the developer that puts that code in to send that statement, that's a very small amount of time. We probably spend, we joke about it really, we spend about a half a day deciding what we're going to send for the 5 minutes it takes to write the statement to send it. But we don't want to send a bunch of junk. We want to have things that are valid and useful pieces of data there. So we've never walked in, and I've never walked in any place and said, gosh, we need to have a CMI or xAPI project. I had a group last year that said, hey, all of our people are working remotely, and I need to be able to text them a piece of content and have them bypass the LMS but still get credit. I can't do it with Scorm, but I can do it with xAPI. They're having to be using RISE, so it was already a way we could work that around. And they didn't have any kind of technical work there. They just published it. Their need was not additional data. Right? They were tracking more than RISE was doing normally. They just wanted to get a score, a completion for a person. But they had this unique case where they wanted to do it remotely via text message and get out of the LMS or bypass the LMS. So that's why xAPI was the right fit for us there. So I have a presentation or slide deck that's designing with the end in mind, and we should get that over to you, Amy, so you get a chance to take a look at things. I think it kind of steps back because we were all very excited at first and said, well, let's just track everything.
Because we can.
And again, I've already been in the geekiness here. But I've got a friend that has a Internet of Things device in their refrigerator that sends xAPI statements every time the door opens.
Pretty flexible.
Yeah, with the temperature and the air pressure. So not particularly valuable information for me, I guess. But,
I think
those are things. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Amy had another question about paying attention to trends. Is there a reason to pay attention to trends around promoting built-in data dashboards and proprietary approaches to capture data? She asks because she feels like it's a competing angle and frame that's misleading to folks.
I don't know how much of a trend that is. I see a lot of trends in xAPI of people developing dashboards because we're finally realizing we have to display this data in a way that people can understand easily and quickly. The problem with proprietary is it's proprietary. And as soon as you start developing unique APIs and unique ways of capturing data, you're going to eventually run into problems like Scorm did, and that you've got a fixed data model and you want to change it, you have to go back and change it, and then you have to change all the content that uses it. One of the things that we've been doing is using tools like Power BI to pull data from multiple sources and get them in. So we've got dashboards where we've got xAPI data on part of the screen. We've got data from Salesforce on another part of the screen. We've got data maybe from a safety management system on another part of the screen, and supervisors can see all this in one place. So I think if you have proprietary tools, as long as you can, get data out easily into something like Power BI, that it's fairly easy to do dashboards combining multiple sources. One of the things I've seen in xAPI people do that I don't agree with is they're saying, well, we got to get performance data in there so that we can have performance data and training data on the same screen, and we can show that we're making a difference in performance by looking at, hey, their sales are going up, and gosh, it was based on our training. Isn't that wonderful? And yes, it is wonderful, but you don't need all that to be an xAPI for you to do it. you can do it in Power BI or any of the BI tools just by pulling data from different sources and syncing them up. And that, I think, is a trend because Power BI is just so easy to use that people can pretty easily make their own dashboards.
Great. If there are any other questions, feel free to just drop it in. We are trying to be mindful of your time. It's now at the top of the hour. Art and Duncan are always available for chatting about CMI5 or xAPI. In fact, they love chatting about it. So as you can see, their contact information is on the screen here. Please be sure to follow our risk accounts on social media, as well as we often will share different information from both, as well as our other collaborators in the xAPI and CMI5 space. Thank you again for being here today. As I mentioned earlier, you will receive a recording of this webinar as well, and it will be available on demand. So should you have any colleagues who need a copy of it, they can easily access a copy too. Any final thoughts or words, gentlemen?
I'd say thank you very much, Ann, and thank you everyone that that joined today.
Thank you. It was fun.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.